On today's episode, we're going to be talking about Alperen Sengun looking like the next Nikola Jokic or Domantas Sabonis, and the Rockets struggling. 13-game losing streak so far. It's been ugly. We're going to just talk about everything regarding that and try to see what's going on with this Rockets team. So stay tuned. You don't want to miss it.
All right, and welcome back to another episode of the Bradeaux and Will Show. I'm your host, as always, Will. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Bias Houston. Over there, we've been doing a lot of the post-game spaces and different content aggregations as far as Houston sports, Houston Rockets is concerned. We got you covered over there. I'll quickly shout out the Bradeaux and Will page on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. We really appreciate you guys continue to like, comment, and subscribe and show us the support on that front. And with that, I'll pass it off to Brad.
As always, I'm your other host, Brad. You can catch me on Instagram and Twitter at BradeauxNBA. And this has been a rough few weeks of Rockets basketball. They haven't won a game in I don't know how long. 13-game losing streak after the last game that we just saw. And it's just been really ugly. There's not a lot of positives to talk about. We haven't had pods consistently, every single week. We're trying to give you guys quality content. And it's hard to do so when the Rockets are putting out this product of basketball. But, there are positives out there. And one of those positives is Alperen Sengun. So we wanted to touch on him today. In his last 10 games, let's just talk about the month of January. 2023, Alperen Sengun is averaging 18.1 points. I'll pull the stats for you guys. He's putting up superstar numbers right now. 18.2 points, 5.7 assists, and 9.9 rebounds. So he's pretty much almost averaging a double-double with 18 points and 5.7 rebounds. And as a 20-year-old, I'm just going to put it in perspective how special Sengun's been just as a facilitator. Not even talking about him in the post, but as a facilitator, Alperen Sengun, he's had 57 assists in this 10-game span, which is the most ever by any center at his age. And there's a lot of stats like that. Youngest center in NBA history to put up a triple-double. Just it's a whole bunch of stuff. He had 33, 16, 6, and 4, youngest player since Shaq to put up that stat line. So he's just been a very, very special player, and the Rockets are finally starting to run it through him, and we're seeing that he is the best player on this Rockets team. And Will has tweeted that out recently. So, Will, I wanted to pass it off to you, man. What are you thinking about Alperen Sengun recently and how the offense has been flowing with him as the host?
But before I get into that, do you or while I'm doing that, can you pull up the side by sides? I saw you tweeted out yesterday, or not yesterday, last week, of like Sengun, I think Sabonis at the same age. I think that'd be pretty good to bring up.
So I pulled that out. I'll pull up the updated numbers now that you.
Okay, that works too. Yeah, and so basically, what Alperen Sengun and Kevin Porter Jr.'s absence, the offense has kind of been forced to flow a little bit more through him. And it's kind of been closer to the version of the offense that we imagined when Alperen Sengun, was announced at the start of this year when we traded Christian Wood. Like, this is kind of what we imagined it would look like. It's still not perfect, and it's still not like there's still a lot to work on, but you can start seeing a little bit of the idea of what it would be like. Having Sengun kind of command your offense in the Jokic or Sabonis role that he gets compared to so much. And then, having KPJ and Jalen play off of that, KPJ's been out with injury, but just having Jalen play off of that. Jalen dropped, was it 41 the other day? And I mean, that we can talk about that game in and of itself. But as far as those 41 buckets go, a lot of them were, he got going. Jalen got going that game because of the two-man game with Alperen Sengun. So we see how important Sengun is to like unlocking Jalen Green and getting him going in games. That's just kind of what it is. KJ Martin is able to get easy buckets, just cutting off of Sengun. Brad tweeted out a video of like Sengun's best dimes this season, and like 90% of them were just to KJ and Jabari just cutting to the basket. So having he's unlocked guys like that now that the offense is flowing through him a little bit more. I think like shooters are being found. He's making the hockey. So like he's just playing really well right now. And I think it's on the coaching staff to make sure that we continue to play this way and continue to like not because we play this way really well like the first half and then fall apart in the second half. So it's on the coaching staff to make sure that we play this way for a full game. And then when KPJ comes back, that we find a way to incorporate it into what we're doing and not just kind of revert back to what we were doing before. But I don't know if you got those stats pulled up yet.
Yeah, they're loading right now. But right now, as it stands, Alperen Sengun is averaging 15 points per game, 9 rebounds, and 3.3 assists. And that's on a very efficient And as I'm pulling it up for you guys right now, he has a true shooting percentage of 62, which is very efficient for a second-year big. That's all self-created numbers. Now, Domantas Sabonis, we're going to his second season through 42 games. That's the amount of games that Alperen Sengun has played right now. He was averaging 12.4 points, 8.3 rebounds, and only 2.1 assists, and that's on a 58 true shooting percentage. So even better than the numbers that I tweeted out, Will, just because I went based off of this point of the season, how
Yeah.
well they did 42 games in. So Sengun's on an insane trajectory. I'm telling you guys right now, he's averaging 3.3 assists on the year. If he keeps averaging around 5 assists towards the end of the season, he's going to be the first center to average 4 assists as a second-year guy since Nikola Jokic in the past 25 years. It just doesn't happen. You don't see young bigs facilitate as well as he does. And they have someone that's really special. And I like that Will mentioned Jalen Green getting going when he had 41 points. You go back and watch those highlights. 4 of those buckets were just off Alperen Sengun, DHOs, and him setting him up. And even that game yesterday, because we're going to talk about Jalen Green's struggles soon. But if you go back and watch those Timberwolves highlights where Jalen Green probably had the worst game of his season, and it wasn't really mostly to do with the offense. It was defense that was really frustrating. But just offensively, he shot 3 for 13, but Sengun literally dimed him on 2 of those plays, a backdoor cut and another action. It was a DHL that led to a wide open Jalen Green 3. Just running it through him helps everybody out, and they just need to spam that action going forward. But yeah, Will, did you want to touch on anything else regarding Alperen Sengun?
I mean, like I said, just the biggest thing for me is just making sure that when KPJ comes back, I know a lot of people were like equating this explosion from Sengun is like evidence that KPJ was holding him back. And one, I think a lot of it is because he's getting more shots. Now, with the guy who's taking the second most shots out, Sengun gets more shots. And like I said, I think the coaching staff was literally forced. Like, we had suspensions, we had injuries. They had no other option but to put the ball in Sengun's hand. Now his confidence is rolling. Like I said, I just want to drive home. Like I really do hope the coaching staff, at least for the remainder of this season, sees what their offense can look like if they run it through Alperen Sengun. Because we have 40 games of sample size, or not even just 40. We have last season too of seeing what it's like when the guards run the offense. And I mean, with all due respect to them, they're still developing. It looks very rough at times, right? At least with Sengun, you can see a semblance of what it's supposed to look like, or not what it's supposed to look like, what it could look like. If you let it run through Sengun. And so let's get some data on what that looks like and how KPJ and Jalen how they respond and react when they are in that system, right? And then that can kind of help us shape of what we want to do in the offseason, with those plans moving forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And so moving on from the Alperen Sengun point, we have some other talking points. I mean, look, the Rockets again, 13-game losing streak, the third longest losing streak in the Silas era. Also wanted to touch on the Rockets. They're starting 10-36 so far this season. Through 46 games, that's their second worst start in franchise history. You have to go back to 1982 to 1983 season, the year after they traded Moses Malone, and you had guys like old Calvin Murphy, you have old Elvin Hayes, and that's a team that was just awful. They're 14-68. That was the only team that's ever started worse than this current Rockets team. And so it kind of puts into perspective how bad it is right now. You want to look from an optimistic standpoint, the last time they were that bad, they drafted Ralph Sampson in the draft the year afterwards. And, they have Victor Wembanyama in this upcoming draft, so if you want to pray, for something like that to happen, go ahead. But it's just looking ugly. Will, but what are your main concerns? We've had the main issues this entire season. They haven't really changed, and we're beating a dead horse here. But Will, go ahead, and I mean, if they're similar, just go ahead and let them out.
With Jalen Green right now, even that 40-point game, that was cool, but I don't think that was like a great game from Jalen, right? Because he's still leaving much to be desired defensively. And he's at the point now, he's reverted back to last season to where if he's not scoring, he's not impacting the game positively. And right now he's not like that was his 40-point explosion. Outside of that, he has not been very good in the month of January. Like it's been very bad for him. And his defensive effort is one of the worst I've seen from him ever. It reminds me of like the very early James Harden days where you could tell no one was holding him accountable for his actions. He just go out there and do whatever. Jalen's out there, he's turned the ball over, not getting back on defense. Or he'll do the thing where he gets back on defense. He gets back. but he's not trying to stop the ball. He's just getting back on defense so you don't call him out, right? Um, there's the play yesterday where Alperen Sengun got dunked on by Anthony Edwards, and you can look at it and say, well, Sengun should have been better at defense, but like the reality is, like Anthony Edwards blew by Jalen, and Jalen didn't even like. If you're not gonna chase Anthony Edwards into the paint, you're following into the big, right? Which is what I think he was trying to do. Go pick up the guy on the perimeter. You don't just stand there and watch. You relocate. You go find the next guy who's open. You go help out somewhere, some way. Jalen just watched, and like to me, that's a problem, right? You can say coaching is an issue, but you should have to coach guys to give effort defensively. And so yeah, he's not really he's been a complete negative on the defensive end. Um, as far as like his playmaking goes, I don't see it as much as I did, earlier this season. It's not really there. Um, it's just got to the point now where, like I said, if his shot's not falling, he's one of the worst players on our team, and you hate to see it because he is someone who was like, he still is very important to what we're doing here. So obviously, this is one of those times where, that accountability thing that people say we don't need. I think this is a blatant example of when accountability is needed. We need to hold Jalen Green accountable for his actions. He's got to the point now where he knows I don't got to try because I'm gonna play 35 minutes a night anyways. Like it doesn't matter if I'm playing good, if I'm playing bad. I'm getting my 32, 35 minutes a night no matter what. And nights like yesterday against the who did we play yesterday, man?
The
The
Timberwolves.
Timberwolves against the Timberwolves, right? Like nights like that. That's the night where if I'm Sauce, I'm saying, hey Jalen, come sit next to me. You want to sit next to me for the next couple of minutes, and we're gonna talk about what you've been out there doing because you're not, like in my opinion, he wasn't helping at all. And so yeah, like we need to have accountability for those reasons alone. And then like the last thing I'll say about just how the team is running, I think the inverse of this accountability thing and like guys being guaranteed minutes, I think we need to figure out we have to stop the thing where we don't know who's going to play tonight, right? Like Ty might get in play, Josh might get in play. We need to solidify a rotation because it's very hard for these young players to get a routine and get it going if they don't know, hey, I'm going to play. If I'm gonna play today, you don't know. It's hard to get in. It's hard to get that consistency. So we need to pick, our rotation moving forward. Hopefully, get rid of Eric Gordon, and then roll with those guys. Roll with this style of play throughout the rest of the season instead of like doing this back and forth. You might play one day, next day you might not play at all, type stuff.
That's a really good point, Will. It is frustrating when you have games where you have Tata Washington, he's caught up, and he's not even getting any minutes, right? He might as well be in the G League if he's not going to be getting those in-game reps. So it was good to see him go out there and play last night. But yeah, when it comes to Jalen Green, Will, he got it spot on. If you really watch these Rockets games, focusing on Jalen Green on the defensive end if you haven't done so already. I really started doing it recently, and it's a lot worse than I ever really thought. The lack of effort is just terrible. He's lollygagging out there. He's really jogging. He's not getting back really. This is not something I want to get on this podcast and say about, our future, superstar that we all want to see. Jalen Green it's just been awful on the defensive end. And if he's going to be doing what he's doing on the offensive end, he just looks like a very bad player, an ineffective player that you almost want benched at times because he's a negative out there. And Jalen Green is a guy who the game before had 41 points, shot 16 to 24 from the field, 4-10 from the three-point line, extremely efficient. He's a guy that is so talented. He has the tools to be a superstar. He's athletically gifted. And that could translate to the defensive end. He just has to show effort on that side of the court. I've seen people say, oh, you guys need to stop being so, down on these young players. It's only their second year. And, there's no vets to hold them accountable. Yes, those things are, those things can be true, but at the same time, better from a guy who's supposed to be the star player of the future, a guy who was supposed to have this insane work ethic coming into the NBA. We aren't seeing that improvement that we thought we would see last season and coming from last season. If I'm a guy that has insane work ethic and people are saying from my rookie year that I'm a bad defender and this and that, I'm coming in the next season. I'm shutting up all that noise. I'm coming in, I'm locking up, I'm clamping up, or at least to the best of my abilities. You're not going to be able to question my effort on that side of the court. Alperen Sengun got dunked on twice last game, Will. But what did he do after that? He stayed in the paint, held his own. And he was still trying, and he ended up stuffing some other poster attempts. He's going to show some effort on that side of the court. He actually cares. But Jalen Green, you don't see that from a game-to-game basis. It just shows that he's not really trying on that side of the court, and that's embarrassing. You're a professional at the end of the day. The age does not matter. You get paid to do this, so I need to see effort on that side of the court. You're supposed to be the superstar of this franchise. You have to show effort on that side of the court. And I'm
And
high.
oh, good.
I
No, I
was
was
gonna
just
say, you got it. You
I
got it, man.
cut you off. I cut you off.
All right. No, I was just gonna say Jalen Green. I have high expectations for him. I do. Again, 41 points the game before, and we saw what he did in his rookie season. I'm not out on him. I'm far from out on him. I'm just saying what he's been showing us has been embarrassing on the defensive side of the court. And if he's gonna shoot that poorly on offense, I think the streakiness will end as he gets older. But from right now, I need to see him play consistently on defense with effort. But yeah, that's all I had to say.
I was just gonna say, and on top of that, like one thing that speaking about like what we were advertised of Jalen Green kind of coming into the draft was that he had like it. He like I know it's kind of like corny or like what's the word I want to use here. Um, I don't know. It's just kind of like oh yeah, like there's no way to quantify the it factor, right? You can't really like quantify it, but it's just, when people say they have it, they mean like yeah, man, like this guy he can turn it up when you need it the most. That guy is going to be there for you, right? Like that. That's kind of guys who say they have it. Ja. They say Ja has it. Devin Booker. The most infamous version of this is like Jordan or Kobe, right? Where like guys when the clock is ticking, crunch time, fourth quarter, you need a bucket, you need to stop. You just need something out of nothing. This guy comes out of nowhere and like when no one else can gives you something. Like that's what people say they have it, right? And that's one thing we thought, or I wouldn't say we as if he doesn't have it anymore. But like Jalen was advertised to have it, right? He was advertised to be that kind of guy for the team that drafted him. And there were flashes of that last season, in both of the Lakers games he played. We kind of took over. He kind of flashed a little earlier this year in like the Hawks and Suns game. But like lately, we're not really seeing that from him, right? We're like when the team needs something, needs a spark. I mean, yesterday against the Timberwolves, you could kind of tell the team was defeated. But like the score, it was just a 5-point game. Like for a lot of the fourth quarter, like it was, you could tell the team was defeated and they were out of it mentally. But like it was just a 5-point game with like plenty of time on the clock. So like you could have feasibly came back into that game if somebody was like, all right, let's pick it up, let's step it up, man. We're not losing this game, and that didn't happen. And it's moments like that where like that's where you want Jalen Green to assert himself and to say, you know what, man, I've been tripping this whole game. Let me shake back. Let me try to force the issue. Like, I kind of would prefer to try to like force the issue, but he's not even trying to do that either. So it's concerning to me that on top of the defensive and all those concerns with Jalen, it's also concerning to me that it doesn't seem like he wants the moment anymore. And I don't know if that's a product of him losing confidence or if the losing's getting to him. I don't know what it is, but like the guy who we saw last year who looked fearless, who didn't care, what was going on. He was out there trying to win. Now I'm seeing him kind of go out there and be timid when you kind of need him to be the most. So I don't know, man. That's another thing I want to point out.
And Will, correct me if I'm wrong, but we can go back to that Phoenix game earlier this year where they were losing by a lot in Phoenix, and Jalen Green had an insane third quarter, was even talking noise to Devin Booker, and he ultimately willed the Rockets back into that game. I don't remember if they won or not. They might have, but Jalen Green was a big reason for them coming back, and he just showed a lot of dog in that game. Will, do you know what game I'm referring to?
Which game?
It was a game against Phoenix where Jalen Green was talking noise
Yeah,
to
you're
Devin
talking about
Booker.
with Booker? Yeah.
Yeah, and that goes into what you were saying. I'm not seeing that at this point of the season right now. I'm not seeing that dog, that fight, that it factor that we saw from him to close last year and even earlier stages of this season. And I just want that back from him. I know he has it in him. Again, I'm far from out on the kid. He still has superstar potential in my eyes. He just has to show effort. You know what I'm saying? That's all it takes. To show effort. And it shouldn't be easier said than done. It's effort. It's effort at the end of the day. So
it's not on nobody. It's not his teammates' fault. It's not coach's fault. That's on Jalen. Jalen has to show effort.
Yeah. You get this coaching staff hasn't been telling these guys effort. You can be mad about accountability, as a lot of people are, and I can be frustrated with the accountability too, because at certain times it's like, if this is the effort that he's going to be showing out there, and it's not just him, it could be other guys too, then they got to be put out of the game. But all of these players have to have the same sort of accountability, and if anyone is showing that type of effort on the court, again, not just Jalen Green, but anybody, you got to take them out in a heartbeat, because it's a 13-game losing streak we're talking about. It's not common in the NBA. And again, it's the second worst start the Rockets have ever had in their franchise's history. So there should be no nonsense being taken right now. But yeah, it's been frustrating. Again, we haven't had a pod in a while, and we're about 20 minutes in, and that's pretty much all I have to say. It's been frustrating to watch. We have to give all the props in the world to Alperen Sengun, who's showing that he is an offensive hub, and he could be a future superstar. That's what he's looking like as a 20-year-old. Again, he's putting up insane numbers. for his age amongst any other center in NBA history. He's outperforming everybody when it comes to facilitation. But that's all I really have to say with this episode. As a whole, I mean, consistent rotations. I liked what Will said. We play Ty every single night. Play Josh Christopher every single night. Find a trade for Eric Gordon. I don't care if it's 4 second-round picks. Is that the last? If that's the last offer you have on the trade deadline day, take that. But stick with your price of a first-round pick, and then see what happens. But you gotta get rid of him at the trade deadline and bring in some vets, man. Bring in some vets that'll talk to these young players and help them get right. They don't even have to play. Just get some vets in the locker room, okay? And that's really the last thing I had to say.
I echo that. I mean, Austin Rivers said it. John Wall said it. I mean, every other day, somebody in the media is saying it. They need some vets, need some accountability. Right now, we're not playing that good of basketball. I said it a while ago. This is probably the least excited I've ever been for a Rocket season in my entire life, and I've watched the team for about a decade now, so a little over a decade actually. But yeah, man, like this is bad. It's really bad. But hopefully, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully, this is not the end of it. The light being Sengun right now, kind of being a really huge bright spot. And I said today, like if he develops the way that's a bonus or Jokic. That completely changes like the outlook of this rebuild, right? It completely changes everything, and that could be what saves this franchise, is Sengun becoming, a superstar, borderline superstar. So I'm hoping for that. But so that's all I have to say, Brad. I don't know about you. Anything else you want to add?
Last thing I will add is, again, from an effort standpoint, everybody has to show effort, because at the end of the day, if this team doesn't get a top 2 pick, what's going to happen? You don't have that guy who's going to come in here and save the franchise ultimately, because there's a lot of guys in here that are, they're not instant franchise changers from day one. And that's what the Rockets need next year. They don't have their first round pick, as Will has always said. And you also have to bank on the chance that does James Harden come back or not? If those things don't happen, then what's going to happen? It's a lot of luck that goes into next year. You're not going to get any free agents that want to come here if they're putting out this level of basketball. So I just want them to play for a full 48 minutes going forward. And maybe some vets will want to come, because you can't just bank on getting a top 2 pick and James Harden coming back, because you don't know what the odds, that will happen. But yeah, as always, again, I'm your other host. Will's the first one, but yeah, I'm Bradeaux NBA, man. Catch me on Instagram and Twitter, and that's where you can find me, man. That's all I got to say, though.
Find me on Instagram and Twitter at Bias Houston. Yeah, man, stay tuned, stay with it. Trust the process. I hope, man. I
trust the process. It's getting bad. We're saying trust the process.
I don't want to sell nobody on a false dream, but yeah, man, trust the process. But with that being said, we'll see y'all next time. Thank you for listening. We out.